Hello and welcome to Talk About It Tuesday. I'm Tosca DiMatteo, founder of Tosca Coaching and Consulting, your breakthrough transformational coach. And I'm excited today to have Elki Camacho on. She is going to talk about generational wealth and getting out of the red zone. And we were having a little bit of trouble getting her on, so let's hope this works here. Okay. There you go. Okay, now you're in the room. I think this is going to work now. There we go. So strange.
So strange.
Well, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. And I'm excited for this conversation. I'm excited for all of you who are going to watch live and after the fact. And for those of you who are new to the platform, I do this because I want to bring diverse perspectives and experiences to the table to have real conversations. That's why it's called Talk About It Tuesday. And in your pursuit of your transformation, personal growth, leadership development, and so on. So I'm so thrilled and so grateful to you, Elki, for making the time to come on and be on the show as a very anticipated guest, because not only because I love you and you're just such a bright light, but also because I'm just so thrilled and grateful for the opportunity to work with you as my business coach to get this thing going. But what I do is just hand it off to you to introduce yourself to the audience and share what you want to share about, kind of what life experiences made you who you are, and just let the audience get to know you a bit more.
Oh gosh, I feel like, thank you, Tosca. First of all, that I'm very happy to share this time with you, and thank you very much for inviting me. And it is a joy and privilege to have you as my client. This is where we get to do the hard work that I love, that can be difficult for others. So thank you also for selecting me. To your question about, what life experiences, sort of made me the person that I am, I think that's a very loaded question. I think you have to look at all the different parts and pieces of that life. But, as I think to answer that, one of the things that I would say is that there's my internal world, right? Like the structure that I've harnessed and that I've built over the years for my internal world, and what that foundation looks like. And how it informs some of my other pieces in life, right? My career journey in corporate America, my transformation into the entrepreneurial market, and to running my own business. I think a lot of the different hardships that have come along through there, interpersonal, personal, work-wise, all of those different types of obstacles have helped shape me, right? I mean, there's that saying, it's the rocks in the brook that make it sing, right? And so, all of those elements have really been core pieces. If I were to look and answer to my entrepreneurial journey, I think a lot of that inspiration unknowingly started with my own mother, who's a successful business owner for almost 30 years now. And at some point in her life, directly made a hard stop and a pivot out of one industry and into another one, completely unrelated, not what she went to school for, not what she had experience about. And so, that was a really big inspiration to me. At the time that she was growing her current business now, I was young. I saw what those 4 a.m. start times look like. I saw, my siblings in my playroom get smaller and smaller as her business grew and grew. I saw, the quiet tears when something would, get messed up, or when an order would get messed up or fall through. I saw what that looked like. I saw the challenge of trying to separate personal and professional. She, for many years, had her business in our home, and you'd have clients and prospects and decorators and different people stopping by to speak with her. It just so happened that it was also the kids' dinner time and family time, or this and that, right? And so there's all these interweaving things, but all of those were huge examples and milestones for me to sort of see. And now, many years later, as my own woman in business, really being able to appreciate, what that looked like, as I had many late nights my first couple of years, and hey, you want to go down to the beach? No, I'm working. Hey, but you have no clients. But this is how I get clients, is by working. right? Sorry. And so I got to, you know, see and have a lot of that appreciation. And then, like I said, you know, my foundational pieces internally, what that looks like, and sort of ordering my internal world for what works and what doesn't, or what didn't, and making some of those bold changes to step away from what didn't, right? So this is a lot of the work that you do now with a lot of tremendous people, is really being able to identify and get clear on what is no longer working and why. At what point am I going to institute my personal boundaries and say enough is enough? I'm going to take a chance or a bet on myself, right? So all of those things also came into play for me.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for sharing that. I mean, I think it's so fascinating to have seen, you know, entrepreneurship in action. And also, I just want to say thanks to those who are joining. Catherine, good to see you here. JB. And I guess it makes me, I guess my question coming out of that is, so you saw this world through your mom, you know, through your mom's experience, and my understanding is you went after kind of a corporate career. Is that right? Was that, like, I'm curious, like,
yeah.
Were you like, you saw the entrepreneurship and you're like, don't want none of that? Or did you see it and say maybe later? Like, how did that influence you in terms of how you chose to pursue your career?
So that's a funny question. So I come on all sides from my family line. I come out of a long line of small business owners. And so I grew up with that. I've seen businesses succeed and fail. They were a lot of my first clients, if you will, right? That internal circle of friends and family. And I just so happened to go down the corporate path. I sort of fell into it. I liked work. I was a hard worker. I was a quick learner. And truth be told, I mean, if we want to get, I don't know how in the muck we want to get, but I mean, corporate is wonderful. Don't get me wrong. It provides a lot of great opportunity for advancement and different types of journeys and paths, but it is also an incredible place to breed mediocrity, right? Mm-hmm. So you show up most of the time, you do some of the work, you talk a little bit of the right things with some of the right people, and it's enough to get by. And so, you know, if I wanted to put myself in a bazillion boxes, I could say, yes, I'm very much a Capricorn. I'm very much the type A. I'm very much the oldest sibling, right? All those things prove true in how I execute, or how I have executed in my life. But I will say that the abundance of mediocrity over the years was something that effectively, that was probably one of the things that triggered my exit, which was like, I cannot sit here in this world of, you know, where the effort doesn't match the, you know, the talk, the walk, the effort, all of it is just so, it's just so insincere, if you will, right? And if I was going to work that hard, if I was going to put forward that much effort, and perhaps I was a fool, right? I think at some point we have to take a step back, and we also have to recognize, what are we allowing? And so that was a really hard conversation that I had to have with myself at some point in my journey, because I was saying, well, I'm allowing myself to be here. If I know that my peers are doing 1/8 of the work, and then I'm the chump doing 100% of the work, well, who really is a sucker? Right? We're all getting paid the same amount, and they get to show up sometimes and do a little bit of the thing, right? And so that was a values, you know, conversation with myself. Could I bring myself to show up some way, sometime, just for a little bit and work and be okay with myself at the end of the day? No, I couldn't. So I really had to measure that against the environment that I was still allowing myself to be a part of, right? So yeah, I went the corporate route. It was by happenstance, and it just wound up being promotion after promotion. Like, when you're good, you move forward. Like, they want good people. They want good people, right? They say they want good people. Do they really value the great ones? Conversation for another day. But my career advanced. It was I was very fortunate. It took me global. I had great opportunity. I had great challenging projects. I had some tremendous teams, some not so great teams. I had some tremendous leaders that turned into mentors, that have turned into friends. And I've had some leaders that, like, I couldn't forget fast enough, right? Like, My life would be better if I never knew your name, never crossed paths with you. So, you know, that's all part of the landscape though. And so when you know, at a certain juncture, when I actually started having hard conversations with myself, that was one of the things I had to consider. Like, what's another way to show up in the world, to produce work, to do the things that I want to do without being in this corporate environment? So perhaps I changed industries, right? I jumped from one industry to another, same type of channel, same type of function, doubly as bad, right? Could have been for a variety of reasons. I think in my heart of hearts, the problem wasn't the environment or the industry. The problem was that I was done with it. I was done with showing up to work in this way. I was done with facing those same hurdles that felt very much like Groundhog's Day, right? Every day I was just hit the alarm clock, run into the day. I might be dating myself here, right? Groundhog's Day was that great 80s movie. I have classes now that I refuse to like make references to music or videos because they're like, huh? What is that? Groundhog's Day, Bill Murray? I don't know him. Like,
enlighten the new ones. Enlighten the new ones. Yeah. No, but like, yeah, like, thank you for sharing that. I think, you know, what comes up for me when you share that is like, there's this and, right? There was this and there was that. And throughout your journey, it sounds like you really had to evaluate, like, was it serving you in the best possible way? And I think that that's what a lot of people experience in corporate. It's like, ooh, I'm getting this, but like this thing is like dragging me down, and how to, you know. And I also want to say to those who have joined, and by the way, Baby Rumble says, Elki, is, you know, feel free to ask questions. Like, it doesn't have to be just me asking Elki. She's just like a wealth. So please feel free to do that. But I think, yeah, like, I love this question. Like, what are we allowing, you know? And I think when it gets to the point where, like, you just have such dissonance, you know, that's when we start asking like those deeper questions of like, what do we want? And I'm curious, you know, because I think also a lot of experience, you know, in corporate can be even more challenging and tough and straining and all that stuff on people of color, on, you know, people in intentionally ignored communities and things like that. And you know, we don't have to go there. I'm just curious if that also played a role for you, because I think that's one of the things that we don't talk about, you know, which is like that there's this whole added, you know, situation that kind of gets swept under the rug. And I think a lot of that is kind of coming to service. But, you know, I'm just curious, and again, if you want to share or not, like, if that was also part of the struggle.
It's not, you know, I would be lying if I didn't say that it played a big part in a lot of junctures where I had to make a decision, right? So I had a great career, and for a very long time, I worked in environments where the majority of the people didn't look like me, where I didn't have a great deal. I mean, I could count on one hand the amount of female leaders that were really in the organization, that were willing to step out of their comfort zones, that were doing more than what was sort of just given to them. And that was hard. It's hard, you know, and real talk, there were people that I had admired and looked up to at different levels and stages of my career, only to find out it was a complete facade, right? Only to find out it was like, oh, so you really can't juggle all of these things without the aid of a substance, or you really can't juggle all of these things without the advent of not someone championing you, but of a favor exchange, if you're picking up on what I'm putting down, right?
Yeah.
Which it makes our whole team look bad. I'm like, ladies, what are we doing here, right? This is not the example that we should be setting for those to come. So there were times that it was really discouraging and really challenging. A lot of the work in ERGs that I had done and were partly because there weren't safe spaces, there weren't communities, there weren't, you know, when I was on the IT side, right? By and large, IT has been a man's world. Pharma, by and large, has been, you know, dominated by, it's a male-led industry. So, you know, there were some things that I really had to come to terms with, mostly just not having a great deal of community strength there, right? And that wears on you after built up number of years. When you are a part of something yet still feeling consistently isolated, it drains you just as quickly as as it's refueling and giving to you, right? And that's a big thing. It's a real thing. So it's sort of like having Waze on your phone while you're plugged into the battery, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm still at 30% charge. Of course, because it was, your navigation system was draining your battery just as quickly as it was charging. So you sort of net out in the same place. And then you look back after all of these years and you sort of feel like, I've been swimming and swimming and exerting all of this energy and I'm still in the same place, right? So those are some of the things that were not the fun side of it. And then there's, there's gender bias, there's pay gaps, there's all of these things that were real and tough to swallow. Like, this guy's getting paid more than I am, and he's doing a 16th of the work at like a 32nd of the quality. Explain to me how this works,
Right.
And the people that you sort of surface that to just sort of, sorry about
No, it's okay.
the burning building somewhere out there.
The burning fire in my heart is like, yeah.
The burning fire in my neighborhood that I pray isn't too impactful to somebody. But those are part of the real things. And, you sort of get a feeling at a certain point when you have these key roles and functions in the organization that really aren't supporting, they really aren't protecting, they really aren't fighting for this, great marketing, they have great messaging, they have, okay sort of visibility enough to get people to buy in, like, okay, I'm going to go to HR and HR is going to help. And then when HR doesn't help, you write it off to a fluke. Or when, when that doesn't work repeatedly, you get extremely discouraged. You sort of say, why am I continuing to go along with this? Why am I continuing to put myself here?
Yeah. And, thank you so much for sharing that, because I think, I think there's a lot of people out there that are in the midst of like this, you kind of came to your reckoning before the pandemic, right? But before kind of a lot of people are doing that assessment of saying, like, is this what I want? Like, asking themselves the deeper questions. And, and so I think it's helpful for people to hear, oh, right. Like, yes, that's part of the whole picture here,
Mm-hmm.
and it makes me also think of, right, that we also have caps, right,
Yeah.
in corporate arenas in terms of our potential income. But those caps are much different when you're on your own.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that, part of what you were really passionate about talking about was generational wealth and building that for ourselves. So when did this passion around generational wealth, around helping women to build their nest egg so that it can be passed down, like, when did that start to be like something you were really impassioned about?
So year one, a lot of people ask me, like, when you started your business, did you know exactly what you were doing? And I was like, no, absolutely not. Right. Like, I knew where I was going, like, to that mountain over there in that direction. So as long as like I was, and I'm very big on being directionally correct. Right. So there's a lot of times on your journey that you get like sort of turned around. The idea is just to keep going that way. Even if we take a detour that takes us out of the way just a little bit, but we're still heading in the same general direction, that's all well and good. So when I started, I knew I wanted to go that way, right? I knew I wanted to sort of hit that mountain and get there eventually. And it was really that first year and maybe some time, the year before I went official and went under my own LLC, that I started really looking into the stats and the numbers, and they are bleak. And I kept looking, and they are bleaker and bleaker. When you look at the small business landscape, when you look at, the statistics of how long they stay in business, how quickly they close, when you look at women in business and those statistics, when you look at marginalized women in business, when you look at, all of these different types of things. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is, you want a sob story, like, I can put together a presentation with these numbers and it's not going to give an uplift to anybody. And so when I was really thinking about, there were a lot of internal exercises that I did, journaling and different things, to really understand what was my focus going to be, really where was I going to try and make my impact, and what was important to me from my own lived experiences, as well as where I can show up in the world. And a lot of it was serving women-owned businesses. And I really started to take a look at what the disparities were. How did this gap become so large? At what junctures in history did this gap continue to spread and become even larger, right? You go from a gap to a chasm, And there's certain decades where there's huge setbacks sociologically, economically, and all sorts of different ways. And that's what I started recognizing, was that, you know, there's some mindset opportunities I think that, you know, women-owned business owners have, and that women in business have, and those women before business I want to have, right? So changing from a hustle or a side business or just a little something to earn money for the kids, right? Any man goes out and he's got another venture, but any woman opens something up and she's got a side hustle, right? Like, semantics make a difference. How we talk about things to ourselves, to the public, to others, they make a difference, right? So there are things like that. Those are on a certain plane that we can start changing and empowering ourselves a little bit more. Because if we just keep calling it a side hustle, then there is no accountability. It's easy to tap in and tap out whenever we want, as opposed to saying, yeah, I want to start my own business so that, you know, this effectively pays for all my kids' extracurricular whatchamahoozies from now until they've graduated, you know, 5 summer trips for them to take or whatever the case might be. But when you have a goal, then you have a purpose in each day. You have a purpose each month, each week, when you look at, what am I driving towards? What types of things am I doing? When you got a side hustle, you're just sort of like, okay, it's Tuesday at 12. Do I have the energy? Maybe not, right? There's no accountability to your goal. It's not even to a person, but there's no accountability to your goal or to your vision, truth be told. So there's stuff in that category. There's also stuff to look at in terms of the networks and the social equity, right? So men have been doing business a lot longer than women, right? I don't need to go on a whole dissertation about this. You know, I think it was like in the 70s maybe, when women were finally allowed to have their own checking account in their own name. Little details like that make a big difference. If a woman was not allowed to own her own money, you can imagine the hurdles in a woman having her own business and going through all of this stuff. If I needed my father or my brother or my husband or my son to co-sign on every single thing that I did, oh goodness, right? Like, that's a huge barrier to entry. But, you know, going back to the fact that men have been doing business much longer, they've passed down the confidence at an early age, right? So when their son's out there at a lemonade stand, it's not about just passing time. It's about, all right, son, you take that dollar, you sell it. This is going to be the money that you use to buy your bike. You want to buy a fancy bike? You're going to spend a lot of money. Well, how do you get the best customers for your lemonade stand? What money are you keeping in that lemonade stand business so that you could repurpose it and upgrade your cups? And maybe you can offer hot lemonade and cold lemonade. Maybe you can offer candy lemonade. Are you diversifying your product line? Lemonades, candies, lemonade lollipops, right? We got all the lemonade here. But these are things that they're teaching them. They're teaching them that the effort they're putting in is for a purpose, for a reason, the variety, and how those cause and effects make an impact. Women, for most part, they don't get taught those same things. So if they were afforded the same opportunities to, you know, enjoy some of these same business ventures, oftentimes it wasn't with the same intentionality that males were taught. It was participate in something, be a part of something, all your friends are doing it, your siblings are doing it, you join it. So that's, again, another plane of that education from an intentional perspective that we need to be teaching our daughters earlier and passing along to them. And then you have the equity portion. You have a lot of men that are now in business simply because they inherited a business from pops. Well, that's great. They don't even like what they are doing. They didn't even care to run the family business, but pops dictated that they would now run the family business. Our landscape of female-owned business owners would look much different if women did that to their daughters. If I said to my firstborn, hey, you're taking over the family business and that's that. You got to learn how to do this. You got a purpose. Now you got a school goal over the next 10 years. It would look different. I'm not arguing whether it's the best or worst way to go about it. I am making the case that our landscape would look very different. And those are the types of things that I do want to make a dent in. So we could talk about the fit and the, you know, the purpose, the way that we achieve that. But I am making a strong case that we need to be more intentional about passing that equity, passing that vision down from our mothers to daughters. If my daughter doesn't want to inherit my business, her prerogative, her choice. But what she can choose to do is then sell my business and use that as equity to start her own venture, right? So now we're like teaching our offspring that we can have different pathways. The only way to get from here up the mountain shouldn't just be exit high school, go to expensive college, go to second expensive college, make sure you rub elbows with right people, sacrifice all of your internal values in order to keep paying off that debt. And then eventually in 20 years, you have enough staked in an organization where you can afford to step back. And realistically, that doesn't happen, because 20 years in, you have 20 years of bad habits that has now shaped you as an individual, shaped you as a member of society, shaped you as a member of your family, shaped you as a member of your community. So now you're up against all these bad habits that you have allowed to also create. So if we introduce new ways of showing up in the world business-wise earlier, then we're not looking at just a one-way street to success, you know, to business success. And that's a loaded word, you know, but.
Yeah, no, I mean, just, yeah, I mean, that was just so great. Everything that you just kind of walked us through. And even in this last point, right, which is like society kind of shows us one way in so many ways. And even like this idea of founders and CEOs, and even like the idea of startups, like this is still really new in the world of kind of sexy and cool and okay, you know, in terms of a pathway. And now you add the pandemic onto it, and you see out of necessity, you know, so many more saying like, what else can I do? And I think also, you know, quite frankly, and coming from, you know, spending time in the Hispanic, you know, media market and looking at the data and seeing like that, you know, Hispanic women and Hispanic entrepreneurs are the fastest growing. And I think a lot of that comes from necessity. A lot of that is like, you know, where they came from and like the opportunities they had or lack thereof. And so there is this like kind of generational thing in some communities, right, in terms of a pathway, and then others it's just like you said, you do the expensive pathway to get to this thing because of somebody else's predetermined definition of success. And so we can, you know, often blindly follow that, you know, unless somebody is sitting there saying to us, is that really what you want? Or is that where your skills are best used? Because not everybody's cut for that,
Yeah.
You know, and not everybody will thrive in that. So I'm curious, just kind of going back to like your transition, when you transition, and I think, you know, a lot of people kind of, I know I get asked this question, which is like, did you start it before you left? Did you leave and then figure it out? Like, you know, because we all have, I think, different levels of privilege of like how we can go pursue other things. But yeah, when you left, did you know what you were going to do, or had you already started it?
I had tested the waters to make sure that what I was trying to do was viable, right? Meaning I had, you know, I was still working full time, and I still had, you know, work for that close friend and family network that I was tapping into. Hey, I'd love to be able to do that, you know. Is this enough to be sustainable? Could I get enough clients in this channel that would feed my business? Do I want to work that hard at, you know, tinkering around on this thing? Would I have to do that 100 times or 10,000 times? Right. So I played around enough with pricing and with different types of offerings to figure out what was viable, what would sink and what would sail. But officially, you know, it wasn't when I started my own business officially, when I officially left corporate and there was no more safety net, there was no more, you know, insurance, there was no more of a lot of things, right? No more, I don't know, clothes being dropped off, dry cleaning being dropped off at my office. There were things, it got real. It got very real. I believe there is a different kind of a hustle when you have a safety net mentally. It's really hard to duplicate. As much as we want to say, okay, act like we have no safety net and wake up and do it like you have no safe. There is nothing like watching your bank account go down and down and down and saying, okay, I have to do something, right? Or whatever this looks like. Is there another way? Let me put my brain to the paper and try and figure out another way of doing this. And I feel like some of those scenarios just can't be duplicated until you're in them. So it was a very different kind of, you know, working when I made the official decision to leave. I did have some money saved up, right? I knew I wanted to do this. I wasn't just sort of going in completely blind. Was it a heck ton of money? Nope. And it certainly was not enough money to foresee a pandemic that, you know, that left some huge impacts, right? So that's sort of a story for a different day. But I had some money saved up to start my business, to keep it going, capital for a couple of months, and get things going in terms of my plan and what I had written down and what I was going to be trying to achieve in the first 15 months. You know, and then shortly thereafter, we get a global pandemic, and that changed everything all over again. I think I spent the first sort of week. I remember the last train I took in March before we had an official shutdown. I remember the last client that I left, that was the very last time I was in their office, right? Their business since dissolved. They don't even have that office space anymore. Like, a lot of different changes. But I remember that first week or two just sort of trying to keep a pulse on things. I was on the phone a lot. I was on Zoom a lot with people, trying to just figure out what was needed and really taking a hard look at my business. And so much of my model was in person. And I knew I was like, okay, I got to make a change here, because I can't keep doing the same work virtually as I was doing in person. In person, when I have stuff on the walls and I have different colors and I have my clients participating, that drain on their brain goes by without them even realizing it. You know, when I try to do a 3-hour exercise on the computer, oh gosh, that brain drain was real after 20 minutes. They're like, huh? Ooh, look at the butterfly. Ooh, stop. You know, like, it was not working. And financially, it wasn't working for them, and it wasn't working for me. It wasn't fair for me to charge them 4 times as much, because it was going to take me 4 times as long dealing with all of their, you know, distraction world. And it wasn't fair for me to not really get to see the results I was looking for in the appropriate amount of time with my client, right? So I had to take a hard look and repivot my business again, relook at my business model, make shifts, cut things out. There are things I no longer offer, and that were good then, I was willing to do then. And, you know, many years later, I look and I'm like, I don't enjoy that work. Not doing it, right? Like, yes. The joys of being your own business owner, and you're like, I'm just going to stop offering that. I don't enjoy doing that. I don't enjoy working in that space or in that industry or with these types of clients. So I made the decision in a lot of areas to stop doing things. And then I also made the decision to double down on certain things.
Right. And I love what you're sharing about this, because first of all, I think that, you know, I think people need to hear, yeah, no, I didn't have it all figured out when I started, you know, and like, and to hear like, yeah, things change and we have to pivot. And whether you're talking about being an entrepreneur or you're just talking about what's working in your life, like, you know, that it's just a process for everybody, right? Like it's always you know, you got your roller coaster ride of like the ups and downs of it all. And you know, and that's one of the reasons why, you know, I so value you, is because like, you know, there is no BS. We're going to build your business to 6 figures in 6 months, you know, like it's not real. It's not, you know, no. But, you know, and it makes me want to also ask about the idea of this red zone, because we talked about, you know, getting out of the red zone. And I think there's a lot of different ways to interpret it, but I'm curious, like, what that phrase means to you. And
the red zone for me is when your back is up against a wall. Long ago, one of my best friends had shared with me, you know, she was a queen of proactive execution, right? Just proactively thinking through scenarios. I would joke with her. I was like, Chris, man, you get more done before 5 a.m. than I do in a whole week, right? She was just getting it done and like naming it and crossing it off her list. But what she taught me in doing that was, you give yourself more flexibility when you prepare. When you take the time to think through the different possibilities of what it could look like, then you have opportunity to switch on a dime and say, oh yeah, you know what? I know what I have to do for that. And it's 70% thought through and I have 40% of what I need to do it. Okay, let me make a switch and what my plan is. And so I'm not talking about making a plan. Making a plan is good, but being prepared and thinking through not only that one thing, but what are the other things that it touches? Like, if the kids come home late from school, if, and this isn't all just negative planning. This isn't like projecting, like, what are all the worst case scenarios that could happen? It's really just thinking through a situation. So that taught me that there was so much flexibility in planning. So back to your question on the red zone, where I've talked about this very often, when we're, that red zone, it's decision time. It's neither good nor bad. The red zone for the opponent might be a really scary thing because somebody's ready to score in their end zone. The red zone for, the defensive team or whatever it is, that might be really good because they're right there. They're ready to make the score, right? So there's perspective involved in it, but effectively that red zone is decision time. This is not the time where you try and figure it out, right? You don't like clean your gun in the heat of the battle. This is time where like you've got to be able to trust on your execution skills, which requires forethought and planning. Mm-hmm. So what does that look like in real life? Man, it could look like a series of great prospect calls, right? I'm going to 2 or 3 conferences. Your red zone can be when you're in there. When you're in there, you're not trying to come up with offerings. You're not trying to come up with who's who. You're not trying to come up with stories to tell and anecdotes to share. Day late and a dollar short. You should have come up with that last week before you got there, right? When you're there, you're just on. Mm-hmm. That's your time to be on and to do the thing that you prepared for. And I think what we want to do is get out of the red zone. When a business owner lives perpetually in that red zone, what I hear is that they are perpetually living in a reactive state. Business was good this month, I'm going to take it off. Business was really bad, I'm going to work like the devil. Like I'm just going to double down and do all these things. Mm-hmm. You don't want to live in the red zone. The whole game, football, it's not played in the red zone. You have periods of the entire game that either side gets into the red zone. And when you're in the red zone, you've got a purpose. You want to achieve a goal. And everybody in there is working to get it over the line to achieve that goal. Same thing with business. You don't run your whole business in the red zone. You have to have time to come back to work on your business. You have to have time to not think and make decisions in a vacuum. You have to have time to try things out, right? First down, second down, third down, fourth down. These are attempts to achieve a micro goal. Same thing in your business. So you don't want to live your whole business in that constant reactive space, because all you're going to be doing is reacting to somebody else's constraints or desires, which means that your vision, the things that you've drummed up in your heart, what you're trying to achieve, they all come second, third, and fourth in line, which shouldn't be if you're driving the ship, right? Mm-hmm. If you're driving the bus, me and my analogies, you'd swear English wasn't my first language.
I love it. No, the analogies are amazing. I love the one with the battery earlier, the ways, and the one you drained.
I don't even realize what I don't even.
Oh my God, I love it. But and I think about this red zone that you're talking about in many different ways, and not just in owning your business, but also like in life. Like whether it's like you're in your job and you're like, what am I going to do when I'm at that moment where like I can't do this another day, for my mental health or something, or like, what am I going to do, in all these scenarios, whether it's relationships or jobs or whatever. And because I think we can catastrophize situations, and we're catastrophizing because we're not really looking at, well, what would we really do if we were in that situation?
Oh, I'm so happy you brought that up, because if I were to take the same example and look back to, my corporate days, there was a move that I had made where I was in the red zone too long, wouldn't acknowledge it to myself. And what it forced me to do was just to make a move, but there were very few options. I had left myself with very few options. Mm-hmm. So you're right. You don't, when you it's important to recognize we are in the red zone. That's why it's painted a whole different color. Like we are down to the last little bit here, right. Last couple of yards, it should draw our attention. But as individuals, we need to be able to recognize when we get close there, whether we're in corporate, whether we're in job situations or personal situations, or in your own business situations, right? It's our job to be able to recognize I'm in the zone. What does that mean? And how many of these can I take on a year, right? How much can I allow this to sort of press on me, and what will that do to me, right? I think those are all really big questions to ask, because you wake up one day and you're like, I can't take one more. I can't have one more conversation. I can't schedule one more meeting. And there's a time where you don't have enough to keep going, not even one more day. That's red zone burnout right there.
Well, yeah, I mean, I hear a TED Talk coming. I really think this is so powerful. No, because I'm thinking about the time when I was in, one of my jobs, and I had this sudden realization, I cannot do this anymore. It had built over time, but I was in this red zone of I can't move forward like this, and I don't know what to do. And that was the moment that I called my coach, and I was like, I know I can't do this. And I didn't have scenarios. I didn't have the tools. I didn't have the openness to possibilities about what else can I do, because I can't stay in this red zone, because I've actually been in the red zone for a year and a half. And so I think
we don't realize that we're there, we do ourselves a disservice, right? And that's where I value so much of the work that you do with individuals, because if there was a you in my life, right, someone to sort of help me, give me space, process a lot of what was going on, understand what was good for me, what was not good for me, what was healthy for me, what was intentional and by default, all of these things, right? I was living a lifestyle where I remember, for a season I had two sets of everything. I'd go to the store, 2 eyeliners, 2 flip-flops, 2 jeans. I was in Germany back and forth almost every other week. And I'd get off the plane, I'd take everything that was in my suitcase, I'd dump it either in the laundry machine, and pretty much everything was in the laundry machine. I just couldn't even deal with the dry cleaners anymore. Fold it up, put it back in the suitcase, because I was on a plane in another 5 days. So everything was double. I didn't want to deal with oh my God, where's my deodorant? Let me just grab the one, it was my whole life was in doubles. So again, that's part of me being in the red zone. And everything was on the go. Everything was on the go. I didn't have time, and I didn't give myself time to process stuff that was coming up on the job. How does that make me feel? Is this the kind of team that I want to be leading? Is this the kind of impact that I want to be making as a leader? How am I doing as a leader? Am I dropping the ball? Am I on the ball? What am I sacrificing in my personal life? All big questions that I had no space and no one to really explore that with.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about a therapist. I'm talking about someone who is skilled, such as you are, who has really, different tactical tools and different ways to help people gain perspective, articulate what it is that they want, really being able to put their finger on what is working and what isn't, right?
Well, and I think what you make me think of is this idea of sometimes when we're in that red zone and we're at that tippity top, that we don't give ourselves permission to actually just fully step away. We're still making decisions. And I think that's, for the audience out there, sometimes we just can't function and make good decisions, and we have to step out, and giving ourselves permission to do that. Whether it's I got to do a sabbatical, or I need a 2-week mental health, or whatever that is. But sometimes we are so deep because society, right, does not encourage that retrospective, that doesn't encourage the taking yourself out, the taking a break, so I just want to add that, because like you said, sometimes you're just so deep in it to really understand your next move. It's hard to do that sometimes while you're in that red zone and you haven't had the space to think about it. So.
Well, and I think, gosh, in a way, I almost wish we had more time to dive into this, because I think it's so interesting. Any established organization that has hard goals and that has reached a certain level of successful operation in the market, right? Mid-size, large-size, enterprise-size business organizations, they practice regular quarterly planning, 3-year planning, 5-year planning, right? And they have them like clockwork. There is nothing and nobody that's going to get in the way of, here's our next quarterly planning session, here's our next annual planning session, here's our 2-year outlook, here's our 5-year outlook. But it's not the same behavior, or it's not the same challenge that they, thank you, Alexa. It's not the same types of behaviors that they instill in their leaders. At what point do we hear them saying, hey, I want you to take a quarterly checkup from the neck up. How are you doing with your teams? Are there programs that you need to develop? Are you really tapping into your high performers? Are there people that are mid performers that you can raise up? How's the culture in your environment? We've got all these social different, you know, elements that are on the horizon or that we're working through as an organization. How's that affecting your people? We don't hear that being preached, right? But like clockwork, they will sit down and, you know, and anyone who works for corporate, who works in any kind of, you know, product, you know, marketing, sales, like they're all familiar with this, right? Operations, like quarterly, what do we need? Here are our goals. Here are our metrics. Here are the sales we need to make. But these are behaviors we should also be instilling in our people, right? So that they can keep a pulse on things. And that's the thing, like when we don't allow ourselves that space and we don't set those boundaries, what I found myself doing at a certain point in time was going along to someone else's tempo, right? Mm-hmm. I was just going along to someone else's tempo that wasn't mine.
Oh, so powerful. So powerful. These strategic tools, you know, and how I think we can do it also in the rhythm of our lives. Like if we're not clear, but sometimes we just follow what is our husband doing or our significant other, or what is our family doing. We'll just follow that tempo because we've lost our own way about what serves us. Oh my gosh, I know we could keep going on and on. I know I promised I know you have another call, and so I just want to honor that. I feel like more to come. But it is, it's such a great, I think we covered a lot of ground. I just so appreciate that.
Thank you for the space. Honestly, thanks for the space to share. And it's, you know, it's obviously I know a lot about what you do, being a business coach and stuff, but it never fails to amaze me how powerful it is when we have opportunity to share our stories. And I think it's a really wonderful thing that you're producing and that you're putting on week after week to have, you know, these invitees come and share their stories and understand the impact, because, you know, at certain points, there was a great many number of years where it was really just painful for me and I couldn't articulate it. I couldn't talk about it. I still couldn't make sense of a lot of the strong emotions I was feeling: shame and guilt and embarrassment and pride and ownership and victory and challenge and defeat. It all just felt like a lot. And then you get some distance between it, and it is fun to reflect and look back and to take those honest assessments and say, man, I wish I had someone like Tosca helping me and helping me to navigate through and helping me to identify what was really important to me. And likeliness is, if I'm really honest, I probably would have saved myself a good 3 to 5 years of frustration. I probably would have, you know, and I think that we fail to make those distinctions now, right? Like people see the price tag on something like, oh my God, it's $5,000. And I'm like, how long have you been earning $5,000 and being miserable going and coming, right? Like if you told your son to save up $5,000 to make daddy happier at work, he'd probably be like, here, dad, take my piggy bank, go for it. You know? Sometimes right. I don't think we realize like the effect and we spend especially in American culture, we spend a large chunk of our lives at work. And if that alignment is disharmonious to our inner selves, to what we're trying to achieve, maybe the family we're trying to build or the goals and dreams that we still have harbored, it becomes really, really challenging to balance that. So I thank you for doing the work that you do, Tosca.
Oh, well, thank you. I just appreciate that so much. You're so generous. And actually, XOXO Princess is saying very informative on careers. Thanks for the advice. Yeah, just, you know, thank you. And I guess I just want to like end by asking, like, is there any last thoughts that you feel like is in your heart to share that we didn't cover, or that you feel like you really want to reiterate as people for them to take away?
Gosh. Last thoughts. I'd say, you know, wherever you are in your journey, and even if you're not sure whether, you know, your journey is calling for a turn at the specific juncture, surround yourself with people that don't think like you so that you can pressure test the sanity of your own brain. Sometimes it makes a lot of sense to us and makes no sense in life. Sometimes just having the space to talk it through, we realize how great it is, or also how not great it is in the same breath. You know, like, oh my God, I really said that. You know, like one of my bestest of friends, she's the one I will go to time and time again in certain types of situations in life. She listens, and she's almost like a stenographer. She will report back to me. She goes, Elki, this just came out of your mouth, like verbatim. I'm like, oh. Like, oh, all in my emotion, and I say these things, but she helps me to slow down, and she reflects back what I just said. And I'm like, I don't even want to be saying those things. That doesn't even sound like me, right? So having people who don't think like you, have just different skill sets, man, those are the gems of a powerhouse community, an insular community to sort of build around yourselves, because not all that shines is gold. And you don't want to wait until you're in the red zone when you need to make a decision. And if you're going out to people that think like you, you'll wind up in the same place that you are, because they'll likely be sharing the same insights or the same risk benefit analysis as what you've already thought up. But bond with people that bring some newness to the table, and that you're willing to get ruffled by a little bit. The decision's always yours, right? I tell this to all my clients. You're the business owner. The decision is always yours. The best I could do is afford you the opportunity to make an informed decision. If you're going to make a bad one, I want to make sure you have all the information on why I think it's bad. But make it and have fun with it. Stand by it, right? I have clients that are like, I need to do this for myself. And I'm like, do it. And they come back and they're like, that was a waste because it happened exactly as you said. And I'm like, it's okay. You needed to see it for yourself. I can honor that and give you that space. But let's explore other ways to achieve what you were looking for, right? So I think that's my last nugget. I think it applies both to careers as well as to entrepreneurialism, but surrounding yourself with people that are going to give you a little bit of challenge and ruffle you a bit. Those are some of the best gems.
I couldn't agree more. I love that statement. And I will say thank you for ruffling my feathers. You do it every time that we get on a call. So I fully appreciate you and your perspective. And I'm so grateful that it is different from mine, because I get so much value from it. So thank you again for taking the time. For those of you who are interested, EC group here, you can find her on her website.
Or LinkedIn. LinkedIn's the best place to reach me. I'd love
okay.
to say that I'm on IG all day, every day, but I'm not. I'm running a business and enjoying my life, people, in real time.
Yes. Find Elki on LinkedIn or her business, Elki Consulting Group. Thank you so much. And I look forward. We're going to continue the conversation, whether it's on live or not. So I look forward to that.
Thank you so much.
All right. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks for joining, and ciao for now. Bye.